Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over your program exam 1 sample questions. Question 1. Write a prototype for an integer function called computer results. So a prototype is just a declaration about the function. It has 3 double input or pass by value parameters, num1, num2, and num3, and 2 integer output or reference parameters, res1 and res2. All right, so in reading this question, since it says an integer function, that means the return type is int. The name of the function, computer results, and it has 5 formal parameters. Now, just because I put the names here, num1, num2, and num3, those are definitely optional in the prototype, but you must put the data type. So there are 3 doubles, and you could put the name. The names could be used, definitely need to be there in the function, in the function definition, but in the prototype you just need to say what the data type is. And we have 2 reference parameters of type int. And since it's a statement, a declaration, it ends in a semicolon. And those are ampersands. Question 2. You're going to implement a void function. So if it says void function, that means it has a void return type. The name of the function is read file. It will have 2 reference parameters, an input file stream called in, and a patient medical record called record1. So right here is the class patient record. And so you're going to have a patient record called record1. You're going to read all the data from the file until the end of the file is reached. The data you're going to read from the file, you have an integer room number, so you're going to have to use the dot operator for record1, the age, and the hospital wing. And you can assume that the input file is already open before it gets passed to the function, and you can also assume that the data in the file is correctly formatted. All right, so the return type of the function is void. The name of the function is read file. The function has 2 reference parameters. The first one is an input file stream, IF stream, called in. My ampersands aren't very good. And the second one is a patient record. And the name of the patient record is record1. This is a function definition, so it's a block of code. Inside the function, you're going to read into record1 into the member variables of record1 from the file until you reach the end of the file. So you can use a while loop, and you would use not in dot end of file function. That's a member function. And then you would just use it just like you're using cin. You would read into record1 dot in order room number record1 dot age and record1 dot hospital wing. End of the loop. All right, so that's question 2. Question 3. Implement the void function called write file. So this function is a void return type, but you're going to write to a file, and you're going to use the same patient record It's going to have two reference parameters, an output file stream called out and the record called record1. The function will write all of the room number, the age, and the hospital wing into the data file, and you can assume that it has already been connected. So, and this is going to be, you're going to write just from one patient record. So you don't have to loop, you're just going to write the information from one patient record into the write file. So the return type is void, and if this were a question on an exam, I would be a little more clear about saying you will only write the information from one patient record. So we have OF stream by reference, and we have patient record, called record1, and this is a function, so you're just going to write, use out, assume that the OF stream has the output file has already been connected before calling the function, and you will write the data, record1 dot room number Then you probably want to put a space or a new line or something in between it. Record1 dot age and record1 dot name. It's not a name, it's a hospital wing. Probably end it with an end line, but of course in an exam situation, I'm not really going to worry too much about formatting. I'm just testing to see if you know how to do this. All right, the next function, implement a bool function. So if it's a bool function, that means the return type is bool. The name of the function is a minor. It has two reference parameters, an input file stream called in and a patient medical record called record1. So let's set it up. The return type is bool. The name of the function is a minor. It has two parameters, an input file stream called in, IF stream called in, and a patient record called record1. So in this function, you're going to, let's see what you're going to do. You're going to write the room number from one patient record to the screen. Oh, so you're not reading all of the, you're just reading one patient record from the screen. You're going to write the room number, the age, and the hospital wing from one patient record onto the screen. So you're just going to read in one patient record from the screen. All right, then you're going to test the age, and if the age is less than 18, you're going to return true. And if the age is not less than 18 or it's 18 and older, the function will return false. All right, so you're already assumed that you're connected to the file. So we're not going to loop through the entire file to the end of the file. We're just going to read in one record. So when reading in one record, you'll just use in to read in the record1 room number, the record1 room number, the record1 age, dot, you have to use the dot operator, and the record1 hospital wing. Then you're going to test and see if the record1 age, you can either test for less than 18 or test for greater than or equal to 18. But if I decide to test for record1 age is less than 18, then the function will return true. And if it's not less than 18, then the function will return false. So in the other one, we read in until the end of the file. Then when we did the output file, we just put one record into the output file. And in this situation, we just read one record in from the file. Tested the age, returned true if it was less than 18, and returned false if it was not. Next function. All right, so in this function, you're going to check to see if, next question, will this produce a divide by 0? So if you look at the value of j, here, j has the value of -1. So if you were to test here, is j, so this if has has a logical and here. So one side is testing if j is greater than 0, and the other one is testing 1 divided by j plus 1 is greater than 10. All right, so we have two expressions here. You have to test this expression and you have to test this expression. Well, the way that here, if the value of j is -1, then this actually would be a 0. So you would think that it would divide by 0 because it would test this and test that, and they both have to be true in order for it to be true. So 1 divided by 0 would cause an error. But because there is short circuit evaluation in C, if this is not true, it will not even bother to check the second one. So in a logical AND, both expressions must be true for the entire expression to be true. If the first expression is false, it will not even bother to check the other expression. So in this case, it's not going to cause the divide by 0. If this were a logical OR, it would test this one would be false, then it would cause a divide by 0 problem. But if it were a logical OR and this were changed, if this was true, it would not bother to check the other one. All right, in this question, you want to complete the function whose header is given below. So this function has a bool return type. The name of the function is vowel. And this function takes one character by value, so it'll make a copy of the letter. Now you can go through and you want to test if the vowel is A, E, I, O, U, lowercase. So we only have to test if it's A, E, I, O, U. So you could say if let equals A, or let equals E, or let equals I, or let equals O, or let equals U, return true, else return false. Or you could do a little shortcut and just say return. This is going to say return true if let equals A, or let equals E, or let equals I, or let equals O, or let equals U. So if letter has any of those values, it will return true, and if it does not, it will return false. But you could use an if condition. Either way would be fine in an exam situation. Next question. Complete the function. So this is a function. This is very similar to what you did in your assignment, in the first couple assignments when you were doing the taxes, the tax rates. So this has a integer return type. The name of the function is tax bracket, and the function takes one formal parameter by value called income, And you're going to return a 1 if it's greater than 0 but less than 10. Return a 2 if it's greater than 10 but less than 20. Return a 4 if it's greater than then it's greater than or equal to 50. So you just have to do cascaded if else. It would be the best way to do it. So just you would do if income is greater than 0 and income is less than 10,000. Then you want to return 1, else if, and I don't think I have to do all this, but I'll just do the next one, else if income is greater than or equal to 10,000, and so there's a couple of things I want to point out here. The important thing is that you realize when you're using a logical and, you must have a full expression on both sides of your logical and. You can't just say income greater than 0 and less than 10,000. The other thing is you need to pay attention to when it's inclusive or not. So that's also something to pay attention to. And since it would be an exam situation, also, since this is a double, you really should compare with doubles, but that's not really a big deal. But since this is an exam situation and it doesn't say what to do with your last else, you should have a last else. So you can't do return 1, return 2, return 3, and for everything else return 4, because you're not taking into account if it's a negative value. So in that situation, I would expect you to have a last else. So you would return 1, return 2, return 3, return 4, and then figure out that this return 4 is not taking care of everything else. So you need to, it's an exam, so there are some things that you need to figure out and either put a comment and say for the last else you return 0, or for the last else you tell the user it's invalid or it's negative or whatever. So that's something you need to pay attention to. Next question. All right, in this question, these are function prototypes that are supplied, and you need to write a main function that uses these function prototypes. And there are certain things you need to pay attention to, because if you have a string that is passed by a constant, that means that string needs to have a value in it, because it cannot be modified. It's passed by reference, it's sharing memory, but it cannot be modified in the function, so it must have a value. In addition, these 3 are passed by value, so in order to pass them to the function, they must have values. This string right here must be a variable. In addition, this string that's passed here must have a value, and it must be a variable. When you have pass by value, you can either pass literal values or numbers straight to the function, or you can declare variables and assign values to them. So let's get started. This is my main function. And so you're going to have to declare variables and figure out how what variables you're going to need for these functions. So we definitely are going to need a string. So you don't have to put #include string here. You can assume that that's available to, you can assume there'll be instructions that say what libraries are included in all of your questions. All right, so I'm going to put string name and initialize it to my name. And then I'll have another string called word. So I'll use the name one for the first function because it has to have a value, and I'll use the word for the open function, although I could reuse it. So if you're taking the test, it doesn't matter if you reuse variables. So there's a lot of different ways in which this can be done. For the integers, the 3 integers, I could pass literals, or I could declare variables, but if I do declare variables, I need to make sure that they have values before getting passed to the function. So I can assign them values, or I can get the values from the user. The whole thing that I'm trying to do here is make sure that you understand when you have pass by value parameters, you have to pass values. And when you have pass by reference parameters, you have to pass variables. And if you have a pass by reference constant parameter, even though it's passed by reference, it must have a value and it must be a variable. So I can make the function calls now. So this function has a return type of integer, so I need an integer that's going to, I can see out that function call onto the screen, or I can just declare an integer to get the return from that function. And I cannot pass the string, I have to pass the variable of type string that has a value in it. And then the calculate function, it has a void return type. So I can pass it num1, or I can pass it a literal value, or I can pass it the same variable again, or I could pass it num1, num2, and num3. The print function, I'm going to pass literal values. Be sure that if you use a character, it has single quotations. And the open function, it has a pass by value string, so I cannot pass it this literal string. I could either pass it name or I could pass it word. And then you should add the return 0. And that would be the main function that uses these function prototypes.